On May 12, 2025, the world pulses to the rhythm of breaking news, where every decision shapes the outlines of an uncertain future. From the negotiation rooms in Geneva to the aisles of French supermarkets, from ministerial offices in Ottawa to Parisian film studios, the events of this day are more than just news. They are the sparks of a world in transformation, where the economy, politics, and social struggles intertwine. Imagine a giant chessboard, where China and the United States move their commercial pawns, where French workers challenge retail giants, where Canada seeks to break free from American influence, and where Europe bets on culture to shine. Why does this matter to us? Because these upheavals affect our lives, from the prices in our stores, to the movies we watch, to the stability of our jobs. Let's dive into this global panorama to decipher what's at stake, where it comes from, and what it means for all of us. Subscribe so you don't miss any important economic and political news, explained simply every day. To grasp the magnitude of today's events, we need to trace back to the roots of the economic and geopolitical storms shaking the world. Since 2022, the war in Ukraine has disrupted energy markets, driving up gas and oil prices, while inflation, fueled by supply chains weakened by the pandemic, has eroded purchasing power. In 2024, global inflation reached peaks of 7% in some regions, according to the IMF, although it slowed to 2.5% in the Eurozone and 3.8% in the United States. Trade tensions, exacerbated by Donald Trump's return to the White House, have turned global commerce into a battleground. The United States has imposed tariffs of up to 115% on Chinese products, while China has retaliated with taxes on American and European goods. In Canada, where 75% of exports depend on the United States, these tariffs threaten key sectors such as steel and lumber. In Europe, workers, suffocated by stagnant wages in the face of 3% food inflation, are mobilizing, as seen at Lidl in France. China, for its part, is grappling with a real estate crisis, 25% of its GDP, and youth unemployment at 15%, all while consolidating its influence through projects like the Belt and Road Initiative. These dynamics, born from recent crises and long-standing rivalries, set the stage for today's news. Let's start with the dramatic turn of events that shook the markets. A surprise agreement between the United States and China to reduce their tariffs for 90 days. Negotiated in Geneva under the auspices of Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng and the US Treasury Secretary, this agreement suspends crushing tariffs on products such as electronics, textiles, and auto parts. The markets cheered. Wall Street saw its futures jump by 2%, and gold, a barometer of uncertainty, dropped by 1.5%. But behind this ceasefire, the motivations are complex. For Washington, facing a public debt of $35 trillion and stubborn inflation, this truce avoids an economic shock before Trump's inauguration. For Beijing, whose exports account for 20% of GDP, it offers a respite to an economy weakened by the real estate crisis and the mistrust of foreign investors. This agreement could reduce costs for European and Canadian consumers who import large quantities of Chinese products. But its limited duration raises questions. Is this a step toward easing tensions or just a tactical pause? The appointment of David Perdue, a Trump ally, as ambassador to China, suggests that tensions will persist. Europe, fearing Chinese retaliation against its exports such as wine or luxury goods, remains on guard. For the public, this agreement could lower the prices of imported goods in the short term. But uncertainties will hold back investment and employment. The promises made by the two giants should be viewed with suspicion, as they often serve more to calm the markets than to resolve deep-seated rivalries. In France, another battle is brewing, far from the hushed negotiation rooms. An indefinite strike at Lidl, announced for May 15th by the CFDT, CGT, and CFTC unions. With 1,600 stores and 40,000 employees, Lidl is a giant in the retail sector. But its practices, exhausting, work hours and chronic understaffing, have fueled workers' anger. The workers are demanding wages that keep pace with a 3% rise in food inflation, which is eroding their purchasing power. This mobilization is part of a wave of discontent sweeping across Europe, with similar strikes at Aldi in Germany and in the logistics sector in Spain. They reflect global tensions. The rise in energy costs, linked to sanctions against Russia, and disruptions in trade are weighing on both workers and businesses. A prolonged strike could empty supermarket shelves, drive up prices as summer approaches, and inspire other sectors to take action, further complicating the task of the French government, which is already grappling with a deficit of 5.5% of GDP. For consumers, this means price increases and disruptions. The unions are right to denounce precarious conditions, but the negotiations promise to be tough. Lidl, competing with Carrefour and Leclerc, might partially give in. But the structural problems, underinvestment in staff, high profit margins, require reforms that neither the companies nor the state seem ready to undertake. In Canada, the shadow of Trump looms over the economy. American tariffs, up to 25% on steel, aluminum and lumber, threaten thousands of jobs in a country where 75% of exports go to the United States. Prime Minister Mark Carney has unveiled a $50 billion plan over 5 years to modernize infrastructure, resilience, particularly in transportation and green energy, while negotiating trade agreements with the EU and Asia Pacific to reduce dependence on Washington. Like Europe, Canada is experiencing the fallout from the US-China trade war, which is disrupting energy and raw materials markets. In the short term, US tariffs could drive up prices for Canadians and slow growth, projected at 1.8% in 2025. In the long term, investments and new agreements could strengthen resilience, but public debt, at 100% of GDP, complicates their implementation. For citizens, price increases on imported goods will be immediate, but infrastructure projects could create jobs. Dependence on the United States remains a weakness, and Canadians must demand transparency regarding the costs and benefits of new alliances. In Beijing, the polemical government is pursuing an ambitious strategy to revive a struggling economy. The budget deficit will rise to 4% of GDP, WACC, 734 billion euros in 2025, with investments in infrastructure, green technologies, and incentives for consumption. These completion measures aim to counter a real estate crisis. 25% of GDP, and youth unemployment at 15%. Beijing also rejects American pressure regarding the Belt and Road Initiative, particularly in Panama, where it is funding strategic infrastructure. A successful recovery targeting 5% growth could stabilize global markets and boost European and Canadian exports. But the risks are high. Local government debt seem at 90% of GDP, and the distrust of foreign investors are hindering these efforts. For global consumers, a stronger China means cheaper products, but also increased competition for local industries. China's announcements are promising, but their lack of transparency raises doubts. Official data, often manipulated, conceal the true scale of the challenges, and Beijing's strategy, combining domestic stimulus with geopolitical expansion, risks fueling tensions with the West, making markets volatile. In Europe, a glimmer of cultural hope brightens the horizon. The Sade family, led by billionaire Rodolphe Sade, has invested in Pathé, the French cinema giant, to finance films and series internationally. Announced before the Cannes Film Festival, this investment aims to strengthen the cultural industry against Hollywood and Netflix. But this success is overshadowed by economic challenges. Chinese tariffs on French brandy, in response to the European Union's 35% taxes on Chinese cars, illustrate these retaliations. Europe, which relies on Norwegian and American gas for 40% of its needs, struggles to compete with China on costs. For the public, Pathé could enrich the cultural offering, but trade tensions will drive up the prices of imported goods and slow down employment, especially in the agri-food sector. While the investment in Pathé is a symbolic victory, it does not make up for Europe's weaknesses: a lack of political unity, energy dependence, and divergence among member states. The ECB's forecast could underestimate the risks if tensions worsen. May 12, 2025 is a snapshot of a world at a crossroads. The Sino-American agreement offers a respite, but trade tensions, strikes, and structural challenges in China, Europe, and Canada serve as reminders that instability persists. These events weave a global web where every decision made in Beijing, Washington, or Paris affects our lives, from the price at the pump to the movies we watch. For citizens, the challenge is to remain critical in the face of the optimistic narrative put forth by governments and corporations. So, what do you think about these dynamics? How do you see the future in light of these challenges? Let us know what you think. Subscribe so you don't miss any important economic and political news explained simply every day.